Good morning, and welcome to Mass Memorial C.M.E. Sunday School for January 16th, 2022, and this is Sister Sharon. We're on our winter quarter, Justice Law History, Unit 2, The Source of Justice. Our lesson today, The Laws of Justice and Mercy. Our key verse comes from Exodus, the 23rd chapter, verses 2 through 3, and it says, "You shall not follow a crowd to do evil, nor shall you testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. You shall not show partiality to a poor man in his dispute." And then our scripture today is Exodus 23, verses 1 through 12. Let's look at our lesson background. And so we are in the book of Exodus today, and Exodus was written by Moses as well as the other four books in the Pentateuch. So that would be Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And so would be the entire Pentateuch. So Exodus was written by Moses. And then I enjoyed reading the introduction to the book of Exodus from the Word in Life Study Bible. And I thought I would share that with you. So it's called Free at Last. Israel's deliverance from slavery was one of the defining moments in world history. It established a model of liberation from which countless of oppressed people have drawn hope. The Exodus became the benchmark for later incidents in which God delivered his people, especially the deliverance by Jesus Christ from sin. However, as you read the book of Exodus, keep in mind that the events recorded here were not the end of the journey to the promised land, but merely the beginning. As spectacular as the rescue from Egypt was, it would be more than 40 long years from the time the Israelites crossed the Red Sea until their children would finally cross the Jordan River. Still, the people were free at last. In reading Exodus, anyone who has ever been or longed to be liberated from political or economic oppression, from emotional or psychological bondage, or from slavery to sin, will recognize the power in Moses' confident declaration, "Do not be afraid, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." Exodus, the 14th chapter, the 13th verse. And so when I saw this free at last, it also reminded me that this week, this whole weekend, and even on Monday, we are celebrating the observation of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And so just from when he said those words, free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last. So this reminded me of that. And this is the introduction to the book of Exodus. Now we're going to go into our lesson. Now I start our lesson with a verse that's not in our lesson, which is a verse that I found years ago, and that it helps to challenge me and keep me doing what I need to do. And it's from Proverbs 3:31, and it says, "Envy not the oppressor and choose none of his ways." And so sometimes when we're going through, we want to start acting like the person who's putting us through. And so I love this verse, Proverbs 3:31, "Envy not the oppressor and choose none of his ways." So our lesson again comes from Exodus 23, 1 through 12. And Exodus 23 verse 1 says, "You shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." And I call this "don't lie." Okay. Okay. Tell the truth and shame the devil. Okay. And so it's the idea that you're not supposed to give a false report. Even if we look in Exodus, the 10 commandments are in Exodus, and the 8th of the 10 commandments says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." So that's the same thing. God's like, don't lie. Don't gossip, because the problem with gossip is most of the time that's a lie, or it's stretching the truth, or it's exaggerating, or it's not knowing the whole story. So you have to be mindful that God's like, don't lie, tell the truth. Okay, so he says, don't circulate a false report. Okay, like I said, I heard it on the grapevine. Okay, if the grapevine is wrong, or shut the grapevine down, because we don't want to lie and we don't want to circulate a false report. It says in Proverbs 6, verses 16 through 19, "These 6 things the Lord hates." Okay, it's not dislikes, he hates them. "Yes, 7 are an abomination to him: a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift and running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. God hates these 7 things. He hates them. And so the way you see this, 6 things he hates, no 7. No, that means he is really extreme. Okay. And so you see in there a lying tongue, and you also see in there a false witness who speaks lies. So this first one is saying, don't bear false witness against thy neighbor. Don't circulate a false report. Don't hear it on the grapevine and pass it on. Okay. Speak the truth. Okay. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Okay. So in other words, the wicked is doing wrong. They're testifying incorrectly against someone. And then if you join along, you are wrong as well. That goes into Psalm 15, which also helps us understand this idea. And this is quoted from the New American Standard version of the Bible, because normally you would see who can reside in the tabernacle, or who can reside in God's holy hill. But this one just says tent, but it says, Lord, who may reside in your tent? Who may settle on your holy hill? One who walks with integrity. And that's why I chose this version of the Bible, because of that word integrity. One who walks with integrity, practices righteousness, and speaks truth in his heart. Okay. He does not slander with his tongue, nor do evil to his neighbor, nor bring shame on his friend. A despicable person is despised in his eyes, but he honors those who fear the Lord. He takes an oath to his own detriment and does not change. In the King James Version, it says, bow to your own hurt and do not change. He does not lend his money at interest, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. One who does these things will never be shaken. So again, this is Psalm 15, just helping us with that Exodus verse that says that we need to walk in integrity and we need not to slander with our tongues. Our second verse of our lesson says in Exodus 23:2, you shall not follow a crowd to do evil, nor shall you testify in a dispute as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. Okay. So that's Exodus 23:2. I called it, be careful of the company you keep. It actually says, another one of my favorite verses, it actually says in 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. So sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to do what they're going to do. You know me, even though I'm around them, I'm not going to do what they're going to do. But it's like, you need to be careful. God tells us, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. And I also think about how parents used to say, if they go jump off the ledge, are you going to jump off the ledge? You know, or if they run into traffic, are you going to run into traffic? Because parents were trying to say, be careful of the company you keep, because that they can lead you astray. And so Exodus 23:2 says, you shall not follow a crowd to do evil. And even if we think about in the New Testament where it says, straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to eternal life, and few there are that find it. But then it says, wide is the way, okay, that leads to damnation. Okay. So the idea is the way of the crowd, the big crowd, the wide way that's leading you to evil, that's not what we want. And you're not to testify. That's again with that idea of being a witness. Okay, remember, we're talking about justice. You're not supposed to testify in an argument or in a dispute, okay, that will actually hurt justice. Okay, so you don't, we're not supposed to be, again, false witnesses. That goes back to our first point. We're not supposed to be false witnesses. The next part, the third verse says, you shall not show partiality to a poor man in his dispute. So I call this show no partiality. So sometimes, a lot of times we think about, well, the rich man gets his way, or we might think even somebody of a different color get their way, or of a different gender get their way. But God tells us to show no partiality. So, and so in this specific verse, it says, show no partiality to a poor man in his dispute. So if the poor man is wrong, the poor man is wrong. Okay. We need to do the right thing. We need to do the right thing. And then it says in Romans 2:11, for there is no respect of persons with God. For there is no respect of persons with God. And so then, we're supposed to be following Christ. So we should not have that respect of persons. And so then, because we are in the middle of celebrating Dr. King's birthday, I have this quote from him. It says, it is not possible to be in favor of justice for some people and not be in favor of justice for all people. So we shouldn't have respect to persons just because someone is poor versus someone is rich versus someone is Black versus they're white or Asian or Indian. Okay, we should not have respect to persons just because I know you versus I don't know you. Okay, we need to have justice for all people, and God has no respect of persons. Verses 20, chapter 23, verses 4 and 5 say, if you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall surely bring it back to him. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying under its burden, and you would refrain from helping it, you shall surely help him with it. So call this, don't hate your haters. Okay, there's folks don't like you. Okay, folks that don't like me. Okay, and God doesn't want us to respond in terms like don't hate your haters. So this story is about if your enemy, someone who hates you, okay, you see that they have a beast of burden or the ox or their donkey and it's gone astray, and you say, well, good riddance, I hope they might not even find it. That's not the attitude we're supposed to have. We're supposed to bring it back. Okay. It says, if you see the person's donkey who hates you and it's under a burden and it can't get up, or it's even if it's hurt or anything, if it's in our power to do, we need to help that animal. We need to help it no matter whether it's the enemy or not. Okay. And so then my Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quote is, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So we have to not hate our haters. And I'll even use this example from last semester when I was teaching on campus. And I was teaching on campus, and we had some integrity problems. We had some problems with cheating in our course. And then we also had some parents who wanted to complain about what we did. And we also had students who wanted to complain. And we had all these extra resources that they weren't using, or especially the ones who were cheating and doing things wrong. And I got so angry that I wanted to pull the extra resources. So in other words, I actually recorded my lectures every day, every time I taught, and they were online so that students, if they made it to class or not, could hear it from all the different sections. Even if they weren't my students, they could hear the college algebra lecture. Well, I did that. And we also had, my colleagues and I, we had these extra worksheets, we had these extra review sessions. And because of their behavior and because of this parent hate group and all this, I wanted to pull all the extra stuff. And I had to remember that first verse that I gave you at the top, Proverbs 3:31, that says, envy not the oppressor and choose none of their ways. Because if I had did that, I would become hating the haters. And then there were students that actually, even like one of my students in my class who had a special need, she actually would listen to that video over and over and over again. And if I stopped recording, then that would have hurt her. And then even a blessing of this, just so you know, the last day of class that we taught class, I was leaving and my colleague was coming in, and one of her students, not one of mine, one of her students handed a little Christmas card basically to her and one to me. And the note inside said, Miss Griffin, even though I am not one of your direct students, I feel like I am, because even after I come to lecture and listen to Mrs. Allen, I then go and listen to your recorded video of the lesson. And so you're my teacher too. And I wanted to thank you for a job well done. And just that's why I teach. You know me, you don't supposed to teach for applause. I enjoy teaching, it's my gift. But also when I'm looking at it in terms of my job versus my ministry, even though both of them are my ministry, I'm there for students who have a need, who want to learn. And so that statement from that young lady and several other people made me go, I'm glad I didn't become a hater, because of those people who hated me. So again, don't hate the haters, okay? Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And then even Dr. Martin Luther King, he has another expression that says that he chooses love because hate is too much of a burden to bear, okay? Going on with this idea, and what did God tell us, or Jesus? This is an excerpt from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew 5 verses 43 through 45. And it says, ye have heard that it had been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. So back in the day, that's what they were saying. Love the folk that love you and hate the folk that hate you. Okay. But Jesus said, but I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Whew. Okay, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. So remember, we are followers of Christ. Okay, we want to do like Abba, our heavenly Daddy. Okay, and we want to. He gives rain to the just and the unjust. He gives sunshine to the just and the unjust. And so he's telling us, Jesus is telling us in these verses, especially verse 44, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. So that goes along with something wrong with the duck. The donkey is lost. Help the donkey get back home to the hater. The donkey is so burdened that it can't get up, help the donkey, and go back and again, take it to the hater, because only love can change that hate. Verse 6 says, you shall not pervert the judgment of your poor in his dispute. Okay, so this gets either way. So also, we don't want to take the side of the poor just because they're poor. We also shouldn't take the side of someone who's Black just because they're Black, or somebody, for me, someone who's female just because they're female. God is saying, don't pervert judgment, but also don't do it the other way. Don't say that person is poor and then you side with the rich person or the wealthy person. So God's saying, don't pervert the judgment of your poor in his dispute. Okay, just because they're poor, so that you look good with the rich folk. That's not, God says, no. Again, no respect of persons. This quote I have for you says, the time is always right to do what is right. The time is always right to do what is right. Verse 7 of our lesson says, keep yourself from a false matter. Do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not justify the wicked. So in other words, don't you become wicked. Okay. Keep yourself from a false matter. Okay. So that means, so I said, stay away from injustice. Okay. Stay away. Okay. And so it says, do not kill the innocent and the righteous. Okay. And that's probably physically killing, but don't even kill them with your words, everybody. Let's not kill them with our words. Remember, no false reports. Keep yourself from a false matter. Because we used to say as children, they would say sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. Names hurt you. Names hurt you. So sticks and stones will break bones and they can kill physically, but names will hurt you. Bullying hurts people. Okay. Bullying, verbal abuse, there is verbal abuse. Okay. So we don't need to kill with our words either. Parents used to say, and I don't know if they say it anymore, but they just say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Okay. And we say that a lot of times to children, but then we need to say it to ourselves. If we don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Okay. So we need to keep ourselves from a false matter. We need not to kill. Okay. The innocent and the righteous. Okay. For I would not justify the wicked. And then even the idea is to take it into this verse, unfortunately, people do kill innocent people. We see children we see people, unfortunately, on the news that are killed every day who are innocent and righteous, and God is telling them, don't do that. Don't do that. Um, don't become wicked. Remember, they were free now. And he's telling them, don't go and do what the oppressors did. You were innocent, you were in right standing with me, and they were killing you. Don't go back and do that. Don't become wicked. And keep yourself from any false matter. If something's not right, if something's not true, then we need to stay away from it. We need to stay away from injustice. And then the quote I have for you from Dr. King says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, our next verse for our lesson says, and you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning and perverts the words of the righteous. That's Exodus 23:8. And I call this, beware the love of money. And it doesn't have to be money. It could be the love of gifts, because I like a gift, but you got to beware the love of, that envious type love. It says in 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money. And notice everybody, it doesn't say money. It says the love of money. And it almost could say the lust of money, okay? For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And we've seen it, unfortunately, in the church. We've seen it with ministers. We've seen it with officers in the church, maybe not in the church universal. So not necessarily just, not our church necessarily, not this body of believers, but we've seen it overall in the church universal. And maybe we might have seen it with some people personally. And it says you have to be careful about, it says, you shall not take a bribe. For a bribe blinds the discerning and perverts the words of the righteous. And just an example from work, not as much so now, because we kind of write our own notes and stuff for mathematics now, or for what we do. But a lot of times booksellers are trying to, or publishers are trying to get us to get their books. And especially with such a large school as what I work at, that'd be a lot of money. And so it's their job, they're salespeople. But a lot of times what they used to do in the past, now they can't do all this stuff anymore. What they used to do in the past is, they might give you a gift basket. Like one of my colleagues got this big gift basket that had, I think it had wine and cheese in it, and not cheap wine, and, just giving you this as a gift, or even like they want to take us out to eat. Oh, we just want to take you out to eat. Or, oh, we want your opinion on this, and we're going to give you a gift card for this. And, and then they started putting a limit on how these companies could gift us. And I think it went down to maybe $25 that they can't gift over $25, because, some folks was getting mighty big gifts, and some people might still be getting mighty big gifts. I don't know about that. But one lady that I work with, or I have worked with in the past, she would just bring me like chocolate. Okay, she'd bring me chocolate or a donut or something like that. Or even one thing they would do also is, if we gave them the business, and they would like maybe provide lunch for all our student workers, and I might have 30 student workers. And so it was the idea that it almost looked like a bribe. Okay, but then we would change companies, and my colleagues, that I worked with directly, I know that you can give me the chocolate and I'll eat it, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna stay with your company. We want what's best material for our class. And so that just reminded me of that when I saw this about you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning and perverts the words of the righteous. And then the quote that I have here from Dr. King says, we need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice. Not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. Okay, we need leaders not in love with money, not in love with bribes, in other words, but in love with justice. Not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. Okay, so beware the love of money. And then if you go back in the day, the OJs told us this. Back in the day with R&B, for the love of money, their song. Okay. And I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but I'm going to do that first line. Money, 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 money. Money, 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 money. And I didn't give you all the words. I just gave you the beginning. Some people got to have it. Some people really need it. Then just jumping, I gave you the end of the song because it says, all for the love of money. Don't let money rule you. And that's what that's saying. A bribe can rule you. Okay. God doesn't want anything to rule us but him. Okay. For the love of money, money can change people sometimes. Then this last part of this song says, don't let money fool you. So it can rule you and it can fool you. Okay. Money can fool people sometimes. People, don't let money change you. It will keep on changing up your mind. Okay. So if you're going through with this bribe stuff, okay, dealing with the bribes, looking at that verse, look what it says. It says, if you take a bribe, it blinds the discerning. It changes your mind, like the song said, changes your mind. Go, oh, yeah, this is the right thing. Oh, you got me, give me something. Oh, no, that's the right thing. So, or it perverts the words of the righteous. Someone who's in right standing with God, someone who is saying the right thing. We just talked about we're supposed to say the right thing. Somebody else comes in taking a bribe. You know, if you got a judge that takes a bribe, you know, you got a jury that takes a bribe, then what happens? The words of the righteous are perverted. The innocent are killed. Okay. The wrong person is imprisoned. Okay. Because of not having discernment or changing your mind or perverting your words or perverting your judgment because you took a bribe. Now we're on verse 9. And verse 9 of our lesson says, also you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And then I put the golden rule, that's how I titled this, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And if we look at our society, we've been dealing with this. You know, we talk about America, the home of the, you know, the land of the free and the home of the brave. But then we don't remember that we were strangers here. We were, many of us were, our ancestors were slaves here. A lot of people were thrown out of countries. There were political prisoners that were sent here, or just prisoners sent here. And so the idea is, but you were a stranger, or even the idea is for now, you were an immigrant. But then people want to treat immigrants wrong. Okay. And God tells us not to oppress a stranger. Don't oppress someone that's different from you. Okay. For we know the heart of a stranger. We felt like a stranger before. Everyone has felt unwelcome before. And God was telling them, remember where I brought you from. You were a stranger in the land of Egypt. Look how they treated you in the land of Egypt. They had you making bricks without straw. They had you enslaved. You were in bondage and you cried out to me. And I sent Moses to tell them to let my people go. So don't turn around and become an oppressor. Don't turn around and treat someone that's different from you wrong. You were a stranger. You had that, you know how it felt in your heart to be a stranger. Don't treat someone wrong that is a stranger, that is a foreigner. Some versions say foreigners, or we can say that is an immigrant. Don't treat them wrong. The final part of our lesson is verses 10 through 12. And it's called, I called it Sabbath rest for all people, animals, and land. So God has been talking about justice for the poor. He's been talking about justice for the foreigner or the stranger. He's been talking about justice for the righteous and the innocent, really justice for all. You know, there's a movie called Justice for All, Justice for All. But now it's even justice for the land and the animals. Okay, even though he's like, how do we get to Sabbath rest? So Sabbath, you know, God made everything in 6 days, and then on the Sabbath, he rested. okay? Because he gave us a pattern that we're supposed to rest. So here, this is talking about resting, stopping your work, okay, and really resting and getting refreshed. And so it says, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its produce. But the 7th year, because 7, that's Sabbath, that you shall let it rest and lie fallow, that the poor of your people may eat. So in other words, what they were normally doing in 6 years, they were gathering stuff for themselves, but they also, part of the harvest was they were selling it, okay? And they were making money to take care of their families. And God is telling them, the 7th year of that land, because ultimately, we say it all the time, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. This land belongs to God. We are just stewards. So he's trying to tell them, you don't own this land. I own this land. You all are stewards of the land. And as stewards, I'm letting you know that the land itself needs to rest. Okay. And I have purposes for that. And so he's saying 6 years, you sow your land and you gather its produce, but that Sabbath year, that 7th year, you let that land rest. Okay. And you let the poor of your people eat from it. Okay. And so because, in other words, the ground itself is still going to produce. Okay. You're not going to be working it, but it'll still produce because God is in charge of that land. I always look at the fact when I'm driving, especially down south, and I look at the fields around me, and the trees are beautiful and the flowers are gorgeous and no one is taking care of them. Well, no person, God is. So they're just as beautiful. No one's out there with a rake. That's one of my things I always say. I used to take to my mama, those leaves in the forest don't get raked and everything is fine. Okay. But those leaves fall and then the trees come back and the flowers come back and the grass comes back and everything's beautiful. But we like to rake some leaves, or mama liked to rake some leaves. So the idea is that God said, let the land rest. Okay. And let the poor eat from what comes up from that land and what they leave. So the poor glean from it. And then what they leave, let the beasts of the field, or let the wildlife, the wild beasts of the field eat from it. And says, and in like manner, do the same thing with your vineyards or with your grapes. So for 6 years, grow your grapes. And then if the grapes, there's such thing as wild grapes. If the grapes grow up without you tilling the ground, then let the poor eat of that. Let them glean from it. And let the beasts. And the same thing with your olive grove. 6 years, do what you need to do, plant it, sow it, but then leave it alone for that 7th year. Okay, because the land needs a rest, and this also blesses the poor people and the animals. Then it says 6 days you shall do your work. And we've heard that before. That's in the commandments. 6 days you shall do your work, and on the 7th day you shall rest. And we think about our society and some illnesses that we have because we won't rest. We think about anxiety and stress because we won't rest. And even this period of time where we were, because of a pandemic, we were forced to be more inside. Some people still can't rest. They're restless. Okay. They can't rest. They can't stand being quarantined. Okay. Or not being able to go, and so it's the idea, especially that first year when people really were much more staying at home. It's that idea that people were like, they couldn't rest. They had to do something. They had to say something. They had to go out. What I mean? And they were like, you're taking away my rights, And it's like, no, we're trying to keep you well. But God told us that we needed to rest. And even he showed us by example that he rested on the 7th day, and God didn't need to rest. But he wanted to show us by example what we needed to do to take care of ourselves. And he says, and you need to rest. And then he says, so that your ox and your donkey may rest also. So in other words, so that your animals that you're working can rest. And then he said, and the son of your female servant and the son of your female servant can rest. So your servants can rest, or even, some versions might say slaves can rest. Some say servants, some say handmaidens. But the people that are waiting on you, they can also get some rest because you're resting. They don't have anything to do because you're resting. And then it says, and the stranger may be refreshed. And even one version of the Bible said the migrant worker may be refreshed. Okay. So in other words, they're saying everybody needs to rest. So you need to rest from work so that all production can stop, and we look at some companies that actually do take off on Sunday, and they don't necessarily have to take off on Sunday, but we look at some businesses that do not work on Sunday, and people said, oh, they won't be successful if they close on Sunday. But God has blessed that they are successful the 6 days they are working, and then they take off that 7th day, and they give all the employees that 7th day to rest. And so it's that idea, God is saying there's a Sabbath rest. And then honestly, even after 50 years, the 50th year was called Jubilee. Okay. And so that was a rest, a Sabbath year. Okay. A Sabbath year. And part of this is, do we trust God that he's going to feed us? He says that it says in the word that we've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread. So even if they took a break, God can make this stuff grow on the 7th year so that you have enough to eat. So even like when we look at the grocery store shelves and they're looking more and more bare, God can take care of his people. God, we sing, God will take care of you. So we need to believe that. And we also need to rest to take care of ourselves. So we need to rest to be in health. We need to rest to have the strength to minister to other people. Even Jesus went to a quiet place to rest. He went to a quiet place to pray. He had to get away from the crowds. He had to get away because him being, he was human and divine, but in that humanness, we saw him sleeping, we saw him eating, we saw him resting. And so we need to follow Christ. So we need to rest. Okay. And so so God said, injustice to all people, to the animals and to the land. You need to get some rest. You need to get some rest. So finally, I'm ending this lesson, and this is just a verse that talks about justice, Micah 6:8. And it says, he has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. This is our lesson for this Sunday. Be blessed, loving Christ, Sister Sharon.
No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream.